7 months, maybe even longer. But then there was a UK study recently by the Imperial College of London that claimed antibodies decline rapidly after a person recovers from coronavirus. So knowing how long immunity lasts is also important in creating vaccine protocols, and also, of course, the fear of reinfection. Now, there's also been talk of different types of coronavirus strains. So how does that affect the vaccine? Also, again, these fears of reinfection. Well, to talk more about this, we're now joined by Dr. Rachna Kucheria, physician and founder, Doc Genie Telemedicine, MPH Epidemiology. Thank you so much for joining us, doctor, on the show. First and foremost, what do we know about immunity after you've recovered from COVID, and just how long do the antibodies last?
Thank you for having me. I think very simply put in one line, we don't have the science right now for how long does the immunity last. And as far as antibody testing goes, you may get an antibody test positive, and many people are getting it done. I know of Delhi at least. But all that says is that that's a thumbprint, that's a fingerprint that the virus was there. It's not really telling anybody if they're actually immune. That science is not there at this point. I'm sure it's that the basis for that science is being used to develop vaccines, etc. But in current clinical practice, that science is not validated. So having an IgG antibody, which is the one that's tested, does not confirm that you're actually immune to it. The second part about the actual antibody, you could see it 3 months up to 6 months, but generally 3 months is the number that's being used. There are a couple of uses for antibody testing, however. One is these large seroprevalence surveys that you may have read about or heard about. Yes. Delhi had one recently, and we said that 50% of the central area has been exposed to the virus. They have antibodies, so they've been exposed. So it's good to do these population surveillance tracking from time to time, and they're useful there. And also in a very small proportion of patients who are coming in with very unexplained symptoms of fatigue, malaise, sort of the post-corona syndrome, and you're not sure if they actually have the COVID, you've got them late. At that point, also antibody testing can be done to perhaps see if they actually had a coronavirus earlier and it wasn't picked up somehow. So those are, in my opinion, the couple of uses that we have right now. But other than that, not really recommended.
All right, and of course, the other big fear is of reinfection. That's what a lot of people fear once they recover from COVID, when you talk of antibodies and how long you're protected. And then people are also worried about how you hear about different strains of coronavirus. So perhaps you've got one strain, you've recovered. Could you get another strain? We have that example of the person in Hong Kong, which was the first recorded case of a reinfection. And he was infected in Hong Kong, and then 3-4 months later traveled to Spain. And there, after the doctors, when he returned and they found he was positive for COVID again, they said it was a different strain that was prevalent in Europe. So these are the kind of things that are also worrying people. How significant is these different strains and mutations that one is hearing about?
Okay, let's come to that. So there's a lot of study in the labs, the researchers, the bench scientists are doing on mutations and on the strains of the virus. And it seems that India also has a few of these strains, different ones in North India, different ones, 2A, 2B, other names being used, and other names with mutations. That actually, the different strains and what they are, what they mean for people in general, that research actually is not there yet. Is one strain more infectious than the other? Will you catch it easily from the next person? That's what it means? We don't know. Is one strain more virulent than the other? Meaning, is it more deadly? Is it going to cause you to have a more serious disease? Is it going to cause death? That also we don't know. So we don't have the clinical correlation with the clear clinical correlation with the variation in the strains as of now. And to piggyback on that, that is research that is essential at this time. And I'll give you some data or some information from empirical evidence, as we say, observational evidence. Dr. Abbas was talking about Mumbai, and I've also learned that at Kokilaben, early in the epidemic, they were seeing about 50% mortality, which has now dropped to about 10%. Treatment protocols haven't changed that much, maybe a little bit. So what's happening here? That is a big question mark. We do know the science of viruses that over time, they do hopefully mutate, and mostly they have in the past, to milder forms. That happened in the case of H1N1 in 2009 also. So is that happening to this virus? So, all I'm trying to explain here is the mutations in the virus. What are they? What are the implications in clinical life, for lives of patients, for lives of people who are affected by it, and what is it telling us doctors? So that sort of research, hardcore research, is needed, in my opinion, in parallel in the hospitals settings where they're seeing a lot of cases and a lot of clinical material is available right there. So that needs to happen so that we get some answers there.
All right.
To your second point of reinfection, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, yeah. To the point of reinfection, yes, it has been noted in the literature, although it's very, very rare. And that is what most of the scientific bodies are saying, that it's quite rare still. What I would like to focus on, however, is the conflation of the post-COVID syndrome, which is not being talked about so much. I know Dr. Kuleria from All India Institute has been saying this for many months, that is something we really need to focus on, and more as we have more people who've been affected by the virus, who are now out, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months out, having had COVID. We're seeing a lot of problems there. And that's the big elephant in the room that needs to be talked about. We're seeing some serious complications. We're seeing minor ones. People are not returning to life as usual. What does it mean for people? What does it mean for treatment protocols for general physicians like myself once they're back at home? All this research and this science needs to come out quickly and needs to be translated into practice quickly, in my opinion.
All right. Well, Dr. Kochhar, thank you so much for joining us with all those detailed, very important points you made, and also, how much we still have to learn about the virus and the impact it's having on the people. Thanks for joining us with that.